Back again with another Word Wednesday. This is part 7, I believe, of a series that we're in called Canceling Sin in 2022. And today we're going to be talking about canceling comparison. See what I did there? Comparison. No. We're going to be talking about canceling comparison. We're going to be coming from Exodus 14 and 10. We're going to be talking about the people that we all love to dislike. Not hate, dislike. No, I'm just joking. But actually, we have a lot more in common with them than what we think. We're going to be reading about the Israelites today. So without further ado, the Israelites, or as Pastor Ant and Minister E like to call them, they can't get right. So we're going to be coming from Exodus 14 and 10. And it reads, I'm in NLT, by the way. And it reads, as Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. They cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. But Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. Wow. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. NIV had something a little better. NIV has something a little better. Bear with me. It says they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Okay, better for us to be slaves than to die in the desert. It's pretty much the same. So this leads me to point 1. Comparison distorts your view. Have you guys ever seen people running in track, right? And as soon as the gun shoots off, you see the gun shooting off, or hurdles. Hurdles would be a better idea. When you're running and you're jumping over obstacles and you see them jumping over obstacles, what don't you see them doing? Looking back. It distorts your view. Even if you can see out your peripheral, a lot of times what you can see out your peripheral is not a clear view. So if you're looking over here, you can kind of still see where you're going out of your peripheral, but it's not a clear view. Comparing yourself to others, if you're running in a race, hurdle. If you're looking everywhere else, how are you going to see the obstacle that you need to hurdle over? How are you going to see what you're supposed to see when you're too busy looking and comparing yourself to everything else? They says, and to be specific, it distorts your view on the move of God in your life. If you go back in the beginning of Exodus, as Abraham is convinced, not Abraham, I'm tripping. As Moses, forgive me. As Moses is telling them hey, the Lord is going to deliver us. The Lord is, you see, I think it was Exodus 4, I believe, where they began worshiping and they believed Moses. I think it was Exodus 4, I believe. They believe Moses. And so now Moses is taking them through this process of being free, but they rather be slaves. They don't even see the move of God right in their very face. And even after, we ain't gonna get it. Even after they parted the sea and got away from the Egyptians, they celebrated, they worshiped like they did in Exodus 4. And then once it got hard again, they began murmuring. Comparing distorts your view on the move of God in your life. You can't see what God is doing in your life because you're too busy comparing your life to what God is doing in other people's lives. Too busy comparing yourself to what other people have. It also distorts God's destiny and purpose for your life. It's real unclear what God wants to do with your life when you're too busy comparing what you have to others. Your gifts, the blessing, the things that He's blessed you with, so many other things that I'm pretty sure you can put in place that when compared to something else, you really don't focus on what you have already. You already don't. iPhone drops a new phone, every year? Is it every year, every 6 months or whatever? So everybody rushes to get these new iPhones when they pretty much do the same thing that your iPhone does. But you go and spend, let me not do that. We go and spend more money on a phone that does the same thing that yours does. Maybe have something different. One or two different features, but it's the same thing. Comparison distorts. It's hard to see what's in front of you when you're comparing your life to everyone else's. It's hard to appreciate what's in front of you when you're too busy comparing it to others. Point 2, comparison clashes with confidence in God. Like I said a couple chapters earlier, they were believing in and worshiping God, believing that He was going to free them from captivity, and now that you see them in a position where it looks a little rougher than what they expected, now they're comparing the move of God to bondage, saying it was better to be slaves than to be free. It clashes with confidence in God, not even in just situations, but even in our gifts, right? Or the things that God has gifted us with, we compare them to somebody else that might be their gift might be a little more cultivated, or the anointing on their gift might intrigue us, and so we like, hey, we want that. Or we feel like we can't live up to that. We feel like we can't pray like somebody else, or preach like somebody else, or sing like somebody else, or it clashes with the confidence in God that He will perfect the gifts that is concerning His glory. It clashes with confidence in Him. We feel like we can't. I can't hit that note, or there's a difference between knowing your limits. Well, I ain't gonna go there. I feel like you can't do certain things because somebody is more seasoned in their gift, or their gift is more cultivated. It clashes with the confidence in God that, hey, God, on your perfect timing, like you'll develop me. As long as I just stay focused on you, you'll develop me. Like I'm appreciative that you've even given me a gift to cultivate. You've given me something. You placed something in me that can bring you glory. Right? It clashes with confidence in God. You see, like they clashed with the confidence so much they were willing to go back into bondage, and to continue to remain believing that God will deliver them, even though they were God's chosen people. Right? Point 3. Comparing kills contentment. And this isn't necessarily for this specific one, but later on when you see them in the wilderness, they were no longer content with the manna. Manna, meaning what I think manna means, like, what is it? What is it? What is it? It was God was literally feeding them. God was sending manna from heaven, feeding them, sustaining them. And they're like comparing what the food from heaven that God has prepped for them. They're comparing it with what at least we had an abundance of scraps in Egypt. Scraps. They're comparing bread from heaven to scraps. View is distorted, confidence in God is shot, and now they can't even be content with being sustained by God. That's what a lot of us do, right? It's because this season doesn't look like a season where you were most comfortable in. We forget who's in control of the seasons of our life. We forget that there's a God still working on our behalf. So we won't remain content. We won't remain, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll remain content. We won't remain appreciative of what we already have, right? And last but not least, it breeds contempt. Comparison. And this is the side of contempt the side of comparing, which is contempt, meaning the feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Disregard for something that should be taken into account. We begin to feel like we're better than people when we compare. And so what does the Bible say about comparison? It says not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves to one another, they are without understanding. I think one version said how are foolish for comparing themselves to one another. Because ultimately, at the root of all our hearts is the same thing: wickedness. At the heart of our being, it's the same thing: is wickedness. In God's eyes, we're all filthy creatures. So what good does it do comparing ourselves to each other? What good does it do? That was 2 Corinthians 10 and 12. I apologize. That was 2 Corinthians 10 and 12. I apologize for that. And are we comparing ourselves because we're seeking the approval? Like Galatians 1 and 10 says, For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Being a servant of Christ means pleasing Christ. So, lacking confidence in Him having contentment for somebody else. Is contentment a word? Or having contempt for someone else, neither is God glorifying. And last but not least, where's the scripture I'm looking for? Hebrews 12 and 1. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. Pretty much focus on what God has put in front of you. That's all you can really control. That's all you really should be focused on. How you run your race. Because when you get to heaven, you're going to be judged by your works. Your works. The race that He set before you. Everybody else will be judged on what they do. So in 2022, let us pursue righteousness, pursue perseverance, pursue to finish this race that is set before us and not be plagued by comparison. Hope you guys enjoyed this message. Appreciate you for watching, and tune in for tomorrow's Encouraging Thursday. Thank you. Love you all.